Hello and welcome to the Hidalgo Show. My name is Rick the Hijo Binya and I am your host. Today on our family government study, we talk about the disciplining of children. Yep, we're going there. All of us don't like to talk about this particular subject because we all have different opinions based on how we were raised and based on our particular worldview. But today we're going to dive into it looking for nuggets, looking for little diamonds in the rough that we can pull out of it and use in our own family government. We'll get into all that right after this. Welcome to the Hidalgo Show. This is your host, Rick the Hijo Binya. And today, as you can see, we're talking about disciplining of children. It is a very controversial subject. It's a difficult subject to talk about. Everyone has a different worldview. And to be frank about it, psychiatry, the practice of, has pretty much destroyed the concept of discipline of children. And I have a feeling that we're going to run into some of that knowledge in this text. We'll find out. Because just like always, I'm going through it for the first time with you. So here we go. We have said in a previous chapter that the child must understand that what your will is to be his law. Now, we repeat that this is essential to the peace of all concerned. You must watch the development of temper and disposition in the child, and must set yourself firmly and prudently to correct that which is wrong, and give it direction to taste and temper and habit. In accomplishing this important object, you will very probably find yourself placed in circumstances to test your equanimity, and patience to the utmost extent. You will find in the temper of the little creature before you, the little creature from the Black Lagoon. Okay. You will find in the temper of the creature before you all the perverseness and obstinacy of a fallen heart. Obstinacy, excuse me. Your victory over his infantile will may cost you many a pang of bitter anxiety and many a tear of anguish. Every parent right now is saying, yeah, I totally get that. Yet you must conquer. Only a few suggestions at this point. The first step in this matter is to conquer yourselves. I like this, starting with self-governance. Children are exceedingly imitative creatures, and they are also very keen observers, especially of the conduct of their parents. Hence, if you would have your children good, the first step is to be good yourselves. Yes, the parrot, ever the parrot, our kids. Learn to control your own tempers and words and actions, and you may enter upon the task of governing your little ones with some prospect of success. And should you despair of accomplishing this work because you have a high temper, which it is possible for you to control, we say to you in the first place, banish the word impossible from your book, and say with Paul, I can do all things through Christ, which strengtheneth me. I know it. I know it is too much for human nature. But remember, there is a God of omnipotent grace, whose power is called into requisition by earnest and faithful prayer. Let your commands be reasonable and wisely adapted to age and time and circumstances, and never make a requisition just to show your authority. That's one that is going to be met with great opposition, because I've seen for myself those parents who are so authoritative in their role as parent that at times they do things just to show their authority. And I can say that probably at times I've been there. It's possible. I'm trying to think back. Let's continue. Set before your little subjects with affectionate simplicity the advantage of obedience in its opposite. And for this, I really like Isaiah 1:19 and 20. If you want to look that up. Incredible verses. Don't be in too great a haste to correct or to threaten, but try the gentler and kinder method of persuasion. If these fail, proceed deliberately, prayerfully, calmly to the work of correction. Let there be no upbraiding, no scolding, no invidious comparisons between them and other children. That, when you have 6 kids, is a measurable task, but it's possible with controlled indignation, of course. This sort of thing usually does no good, but much harm. Indeed it does. Let your corrections be administered in private, not before company. It's a policy of mine, been that way for a long time, and that does lead sometimes to those who are in public thinking that you do not discipline your children. But because I make sacred the private and the ability to discipline my children as the Lord has commissioned me, I do not make spectacle of them in public. Let the culprit see that while a sense of duty has compelled you to the use of the rod, you have carefully avoided everything which might unnecessarily wound his sensibilities or mortify him. You're not threatening to kill him. I've seen that condition in Walmart before. I call it the mortification discipline method, where you just mortify your child to the point of submission and they just cry till the cows come home. Not saying that's good. Whenever you undertake to correct him for a fault, never cease till you have subdued the offender to confession, contrition, and the promise of future improvement. Very important to talk to children. This is my observance, my personal observance. Very important to talk to children and to get them to, in a contrite manner, to confess to the fact that they were wrong and that they will improve. Even if they don't immediately. I consider this important. It may be a hard struggle, but as you love your child, don't give it over till you succeed. It may cure him at once and save him many a score of lashes in coming time. You can definitely sense the time period that we're in. Words like lashes would today be deemed quite brutal and violent. Although we can all, those of us who are in Christ particularly, we know what it actually means. In your administration, be decided and uniform. Let children understand from the beginning that they must obey. That your rules are settled. It is settled law, son. That obedience is sure to be met, its reward. And that the penalty uniformly succeeds disobedience. And that, two, without any storm of threatening or scolding, and I beg leave to record just at this point that in an experience of nearly 40 years, I do not recollect a single case with children or servants in which threatening or ill-natured scolding ever produced any good results. So our writer has just exposed to us that they've only had just about 40 years of experience. So we can conclude that they've been a parent for some close to 40 years, or a master of a servant slave for nearly 40 years. In your administration, ever bear this in mind, that it is the certainty and not the severity of punishment which is effective. If you have once punished your child for an offense, never upbraid him with it afterwards. In other words, do you remember when you did this? Do you recall the time you did this and you got this punishment? He's advocating that you not do that. Let's continue. I have known mothers who were in the habit of saying whenever their child or their children offended, "That's just the way you always do. You never do anything right." And then follows a rehearsal of the criminal docket for the last 10 years. Yeah. Spend any day at Walmart and sit in the toy aisle, and you will find this to be the case. Now, this is very wrong. If the child has committed these many and great and long continued wrongs, and you have performed your duty, the proper correction has been administered, in which case it is certainly cruel and unjust to bring up these matters again to mortify and annoy him. And if, as is almost sure to be the case, the allegation is untrue, why then you not only unnecessarily wound his sensibilities, but knowing as he does that the thing is untrue and that the parent knows it to be so, there is danger that he will lose confidence in your veracity and may be led to cherish feelings of recklessness, which may ruin him and destroy your peace forever. I have known parents who had a foolish habit of entertaining their visitors with a detailed and minute history of the delinquencies of their children. And at the close of this long chapter, the announcement is deliberately made by the foolish parent that they have given up in despair, that it is impossible for them to govern young master or mistress. And this fatal announcement is made in their presence. Is it any wonder that these youthful delinquents resolve to reap the fruits of their victory, and that they make good in times to come with injudicious declarations? Another evil of opposite character, but of kindred tendency, finds its origin in the fondness of certain doting parents, who, being persuaded that their children have no equals in the land as it regards amiability, beauty, and especially genius and intelligence, and being fully persuaded that there is nothing half so important in national or state or church affairs as the sayings or doings of these same prodigies, entertain you by the hour with the astounding developments of mind and taste which paternal or maternal good sense and impartiality have discerned. Every smart saying is duly reconciled and properly reported for the instruction of their next visitors, with the aid of the necessary trimmings. Now a due proportion of blame or praise, properly administered as to time and place and manner, will be found of great importance in the training of children. But the extremes of reproach on the one hand, or of flattery on the other, as indicated above, must always exert an injurious influence on the tempers and conduct of children. If you have several children, see to it that there be the utmost impartiality in your conduct towards them. Let them feel that they are all equal beloved. Let there be no favorite children, or if there be, keep it strictly within your own bosom. Let nothing in your conduct indicate that you have any such favorite, or else you will be apt to introduce trouble into your house. For sure. I am fortunately in a situation where all 6 of my children are dearly beloved, and really there is no separation between them in the way that they're treated or addressed. I only feel that my youngest has been slighted at times because, of being the youngest, but that's something that every youngest child feels. Let's continue. Your pet may be tempted to presume on your avowed partiality and act offensively, and your foolish partiality may make him the object of the jealousy, if not ultimately of the hatred of brothers and sisters, and your house become the scene of fraternal feuds which may embitter the evening of your days, and follow your memory to the tomb with a curse rather than a blessing. Remember old Jacob and his amiable and beloved boy. Alas, what trouble and anguish did the foolish fondness and the public expression of it in the coat of many colors bring both upon the aged patriarch and the pious and noble-hearted Joseph. You will teach your children early and constantly to reverence the instruction of religion. Teach them to regard the Bible as the book of God. You should see to it that they keep holy the Sabbath day. Teach them to look upon it not as the other days of the week, but as the emphatically belonging to God, and that it demands of them a separation from ordinary amusements, visits, and employments. Let me stop right there for a second. I think the separation between the Sabbath and the other days needs to be understood for sure. But I think that our forefathers, in some way, really did an injustice in making such a intrepid declaration towards the Sabbath day, being a separate, holy, don't touch, no, nothing day. In so doing what they did, they created a situation to where the other days of the week were purely unholy. And I want to move away from that. I want to go to a place where we see every day as a day as unto the Lord. Every day as a day to which we must keep separate and holy. While Sunday will always be the holy of holies, let's let Monday through Saturday be also holy days, days where we continue to preserve the teachings, the ways, and the deeds of Christ. Just a little piece there. Let's continue. Lead them to the house of God at a very early age, and enforce attendance on its services mildly, but firmly and uniformly, as long as they remain under your control. And do you faithfully endeavor that they be duly impressed with the sanctity of the courts of God's house. I confess, you know what? Let's stop right there. In the courts of God's house. This place that you are bringing your children to, this author properly refers to it as the courts of God's house. Let's consider that the assembly is a jural assembly. It's one that has the ability to bring judgment. How do we know this? Well, let's read in the scriptures and find what it says about the fact that do we not know that we will judge the angels? Let's find the instruction in Matthew chapter 18 that deals with someone who has created an offense in the house and how we should deal with it. This is a jural assembly. It is one that is important for you to maintain. The scripture mandates that we not forsake the assembling of ourselves together as others have grown accustomed to doing. It's very important that we keep the house of the Lord, the courts of God's house, in some manner. Why? Because that is the jural assembly, and find us an assembly that understands its role properly. If you are going to a club that meets and listens to someone preach sings a few songs, and then does some service throughout the week, whether it's in the community or in the four walls of the church, and you come back and you do that every week just like it is, and you never actually do the dual work of the Lord, well, look for another. Look for one that does the dual work of the Lord. The house of God are the courts of God. Let's continue. I confess my very soul is frequently grieved when I see in the house of God a group of gay, meaning happy. Let's not get offended here, okay, guys? A group of gay, thoughtless, laughing, whispering, tittering young people, many of whom I recognize as the sons and the daughters of Christian and Methodist parents. And I regret to add that this disposition to desecrate the temple of Yahuwah exists to a large extent among the class of our young people who make large pretensions to scholarship and mental training. Wow. That's actually an indictment on schooling, the pathway of schooling. Let's continue. Upon what shall we charge this delinquency? It is, or is it to be attributed to the parents, the teachers, or are the young sinners themselves alone to be charged with it? Selfishness is one of the essential ingredients of a fallen and corrupt heart. It is deeply rooted in the breast of childhood, and its growth is largely in advance of the physical developments of the body. And this growth is greatly promoted by the training of boyhood. The parent caters to it when, in order to secure obedience, the child is hired, and its love and its confidence are the price of bribes. There are many fathers who are constantly inculcating upon their sons such maxims as take care of number one, every man for himself. And both the practice and the teaching of the parents deeply impress the child with the sentiment that man's chief business here is to gratify and glorify himself. Another sad indictment to secularized society. Let's continue. The result of such counsels from a parent's lips, it requires no prophet to predict. The principles of selfishness take deep root in his nature and diffuse themselves throughout his whole character until it may be said of him that he lives and moves and breathes only in view of the gratification of self. Ouch! He has, in short, no eye to see, no heart to feel, no pocket to relieve the wants of his race. In short, he has no heart to love his God or his fellow men or his country, only so far as they may be made tributary to self. It will be our constant effort to express better sentiments, even much as in unison with the sublime teaching of the apostle. No man liveth to himself. Let your children learn from both the teachings, the spirit, and the conduct of their parents, that God made them for usefulness, and that in this thing alone can they hope to find peace and happiness. If you expect your children to succeed well in any of the walks of useful and honorable life, you must by all means seek to awaken within them a spirit of independence. Even from early childhood, let him learn to wait on themselves. It is a sad misfortune for children to have servants to wait on them. For a young master to have a servant to clean his shoes, to bring him water, make his fire, bridle and saddle his horse, and do 100 other little matters for him, which he ought by all means to do for himself. Although his father were able to give him $1,000,000, it would be good rule in bringing up children to let them understand that nobody should do for them what they are able to do for themselves. And this would lead them to the spirit and the habits of self-dependence, which are so necessary to one who will be called to buffet the winds and waves of this world. Raise your son thus, and when you lead him forth at manhood and bid him go and seek his fortune, give him your parting prayer and blessing, and bid him remember that he has to depend alone upon God and himself, and you need not be greatly troubled. Be sure that he belongs to the class of men who almost uniformly succeed. It is of very great consequence that you teach your children habits of industry. Unless this is done, all other instruction will profit them to a very limited extent. Idleness is the fruitful parent of very much evil. Train your sons to business. Teach them to work, and they will bless you for it in the coming time. He who brings up his son in idleness usually sends out upon society another encumbrance and curse. There is a strange antipathy to labor among the young of this generation, which bodies much evil to country and church. The rich among us live in luxury and show, and those who are poorer follow suit. Honest labor is repudiated as unbecoming in young men of gentility and education, and as affording quite too slow a process for acquiring the necessary fund for maintaining proper rank and appearance. Some other more genteel and expeditious method of attaining the coveted distinction must therefore be resorted to. And in this folly the parents generally lead the way. We will suppose here is a thrifty farmer who has by his own skill and industry in agricultural pursuits acquired a competency and respectability. He has 3 sons to be educated and provided for. What is he going to make of them? Farmers, of course. As you value your reputation with the family, don't make such a suggestion, or the old people will give you a glance of pity and surprise, as much as to say, how oddly you talk. You are at least a century behind the age. Why, man? We are people of property, and able to give our sons such an education as shall fit them to move in the higher circles. Make farmers of them. No, one shall study law. After he passes through college, another shall read physic, and the third shall be a gentleman at large. Make farmers of them. It would be a sin against the republic of mind to withdraw so large a portion of intellectual wealth from its capital. I have worked hard all my life, says the farmer, and am resolved that my children shall never have to do it. Now this is a very strange affair. Here is a man who under Providence owes everything he has in this world, both to the fortune and character, and to this same hard work, but for its necessity and influence upon him, he would possibly have been long ago hanged or lodged in the state's prison, or been today a wandering vagabond, instead of being as he is, the honest, virtuous, and respectable head of a prosperous family. And yet to hear him talk, you would suppose that hard work embraced in itself half the evils of pandemonium. Well, these sons of promising genius commenced their career. Their earlier years are passed in idleness. One of the first lessons which have thoughtfully mastered is to eschew hard work. Some old writer has quaintly said that an idle man's brain is the devil's workshop. 'Twas wisely spoken, and alas for the country, these shops are numerous, and the workman is rapid, so that plans, plots, and deeds of wickedness are turned off in swift succession to the great annoyance of all good people. Even gray hairs can scarcely be entrusted with leisure. Go to one of our villages and mark that knot of noisy village politicians who hold their daily sessions and spend most of their time in idle chat. Who that knows human nature will not feel for them? Old and established as they are, there is danger that they may get into mischief. Either their club will become a sort of radiating point for slander, a court where the absent are every day put to the bar and tried without the liberty of defense, or rancorous animosities are engendered, which issue in lasting hatred or even in bloodshed, or else the stimulus of town gossip being insufficient, the bar room and decanter supply the deficiency, or this failing to meet the demand for excitement, there is a very natural and easy process into the back room, which introduces them into the mysteries of the card or billiard table. If the case of the old be so, who will not tremble to see the youth of the country placed in such circumstances of temptation? May we not reasonably anticipate the very worst results to them from this experiment? And does not the actual state of things in the country show that our largest language is not misapplied in painting these dangers and evils? Go to your cities and villages and mark the swarms of young men and lads who darken the doors of bar rooms and lounge about taverns. Who are they? You shall find that they mostly belong to the class of young gentlemen who are quite too sentimental and genteel to perform manual labor. But they are men of skill to mingle strong drink, and more so to swallow it, who are proficients in the study and practice of profanity, who are greeted by the clique as young men of parts and spirit. Who are those who spend much of the day and most of the night in back rooms, or disturb the repose of village kitchens, or interrupt the quiet and peaceful inhabitants by their nocturnal yellings and obscene speeches and songs? Who are those that crowd to your race courses, those schools of gambling and dissipation, and promote all sorts of wickedness? The greater portion of them will be found to have proceeded from this class, whence also proceeds the most of this class of young bipeds, who march, stick in hand, in the rear of a cigar, to the house of God, and show their independence of God and man by talking, laughing, smoking, and otherwise outraging all the laws of propriety and good breeding. Alas for us, if among these we are to look for the future, lawgivers and rulers of our land, or should hostile feet press our shores, if these are to constitute the country's strong arm of defense. I conclude this part of the subject by entreating you, parents, to bring up your children to habits of industry and put them into some honest calling, whereby they may obtain an honest living and be a blessing to you and to the country. Now, I read a lot there without actually getting much commentary. But let me just stop right here. This is actually the end of our section for today. But I want to talk to you a little bit about this subject of preparing our children for industry. This is much of the reason why I'm going through this book. This is the nugget that I was looking for, right here at the very end. A house is a government, a family government. And this family government must have some means by which to support itself and self-sustain its house. Some industry that it must be called to sustain its house. And in that industry, that house must find ways to succeed in the public in order to bring that blessing of commerce in the public into the private, whereby it is used to sustain itself. And this is the very place where I want to settle and have a quick discussion. Houses, in general, by my observance, have particular missions. They have particular skill sets, if you will. And these skill sets that they have are commissioned by God, given to them by God in order to use in commerce, in order to sustain themselves and to contribute overall to society. In the case of the house of Hidalgo, I have with us in this house a Levitical house. We are a house of those who want to serve the Lord through matters of, I want to call it entertainment, but not in the sense that you might think entertainment. Within my house, I have actors. I have sports stars. I'm not sure how to... athletes, that's a better way to put it, perhaps. Within my house, I have those who are singers, who are great at what they do. Perhaps even a very proficient comedian. Within my house, I might say that my house is called to utilize matters of entertainment to first bring people to a knowledge of Jesus Christ, and then through the act of doing the industry of entertainment, bringing and supplying self-sustainability to the house, so that as each member of the house goes out and does the thing that they are called to do, they might bring back a piece of that sustainability puzzle. Now, as a matter of accomplishing the task of doing what I've just laid out, a house in itself would find itself in a place of self-proclamation. It would have to essentially self-proclamate that, A, I have learned this, or A, I have learned that, if it did not first come together with other houses to verify, to certify, to ordain the fact that, yes, in fact, this house and this member of this house has been called to this and is proficient in that. A house alone cannot successfully make a proclamation in the days that we live. It takes the houses of God to come together into some sort of, for lack of a better word, I'm going to call it a union. They come together into a union and they back each other, certify one another, ordain one another, give one another the backing needed by profession of mastery, certification of mastery, to be able to move then into the public spaces, into commerce, and to utilize their talents there to bring it then back to the public, or back to the private, to sustain their own families. And while this can be done in a variety of ways, set up structurally in a variety of ways, it must be done, or we will lose. We will lose our country forever. The teachings of the security of the house leads to the teaching of the security of a country, because it is the house that makes up the country. And if one wants to protect their house, they must protect their country. You see, it is the protection of a house, the security of a house, the sustainability of a house in which starts to yield the benefit of a state. If a state in itself starts to form out of a need for a state, it will turn defiant. It will turn against the very makers of the state. But if a house and many houses come together for the security of their own house, for the self-sustainability of their own house, out of that security, that need for security, comes a state. And in its completion, there is justice, there is law, there is beauty. It all starts with the family. All of it. And until we can teach that each family must hold its own law in order to effectively have a state come out of it that holds the law for the benefit of the security of each house and each family. When we can teach that, we will have a new America. We will have a new world order. How about that? That's what we call the new world order. The real New World Order is when each family sustains itself, secures itself in such a way it comes together with other houses. It forms a pact among houses that we call a state. And that state has a limited government. And that limited government, its only reasonable purpose for existing is to protect the houses which make it up. That's it. Simple, simple, simple. Not ever to tell the houses what it must do to administrate the houses. No. The houses administrate themselves. It simply is there as a protective shield. That's it. Simple. Done. This is true governance under the scriptures. Period. Good day. This has been the House of Hidalgo Show. Well, now we're called the Hidalgo Show. It's me. I've been your host this whole time, Rick the Hijo Benya. And now we move into the finale. We're going to give credit again to those who support this channel. Thank you for your gracious support. Please see their names in the final credits. If you want to be among those, you want to be a supporter of the Hidalgo Show, you can be that also. You just got to go to patreon.com and sign up as a supporter. If you sign up for $5 or more, you'll get extra content that nobody else can get. There's lots of content from 2018 that only certain level patrons can get. $5 or more. If you're not interested in the additional content, if all you want is what you get here on this weekly broadcast, well, then just support us by passing, sharing, liking all of our content. Visit our Facebook page, The Hidalgo Show. Or you can go and like our channel on YouTube, which is called Rick the Hijo Benya. And you can get all of our content there. Otherwise, I thank you much for listening today, and I ask that you would pray for us. Pray that God would continue to bless this house, and pray for us as we do study industry, and as we begin to operate in the industry that the Lord of heaven and earth has called us to. We're planning on launching a physical church in a big top tent in Lesterville, South Dakota in April of 2019. We are planning on launching an official ministry of the Lord Yahushua HaMashiach in May of 2019. It's called Trinity Wrestling America. If you're interested in being a part of that, or if you're interested in finding out what we're doing and praying for us, we have a website there too. It's trinitywrestlingamerica.org. God bless you all. Please keep us in your prayers, and everyone have a wonderful day. In the name of Jesus Christ. Remember, all that we do on this channel, everything we do is all about the blood.